Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvaiditam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasya Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Triguna Rahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We salute the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, and all other pairs of opposites. We recognize that one as the only witness of the changing phenomena of this universe. May we, through that grace, go beyond darkness and delusion and realize the truth in this very life. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Shtapakaya Chadharmasya Sarvadharma Swarupine Avatara Varishtaya Sri Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Our eternal salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, who is the establisher of the truth of all religions, who is the essence and embodiment of all dharmas, who embodies within himself the best of all avatars, who is dear to the devotees. Om Namah Shri Bhagavate Ramakrishnaya Namo Namaha. So there's our salutations on the day after Sri Ramakrishna's Jayanti and Blessed Advent. So we are embarking now on the next 10 verses. We've done the first 10. That's almost 20% of the 58 verses of encomium to the excellence of self-effort. And last time, when we were here last, we were really working through different yogic systems. And now we're kind of making a shift towards Tantra, but we're kind of combining Tantra and Samkhya here. And because we'll be talking about the 10 tenets of the Samkhya philosophy, which is, it's just, I keep seeing this line on this statement online that says a master class in whatever it is. And these 10 tenets are like a master class in how to discriminate and see through, reason your way out of the box of conventional thinking, upbringing, etc., everything that is materialistically inclined. So let's take a look at the verse. Here we go. So let's take these two, kind of like 9 and 10, 11 and 12 are going to go together really well. So early along the superlative way, what is the superlative way? That's the way of non-dual abidance. It's the way of discrimination. It's a true spiritual life. There's so many ways we could describe that. Early along the superlative way, my gracious guru came forward again to warn me about the 16 evolutes of Maya. I perceived them prevalent throughout relativity and got free by studying the 10 fundamental tenets of Samkhya. So as I was thinking about this, I was really struck by that statement. My gracious guru came forward again to warn me about the 16 evolutes of Maya. The gracious guru came forward. One of the things that we readily tell about our poet here, our sage, is that when the guru and when the seers and when the revealed scriptures state something, she immediately accepts it. Now, this is something that for Westerners is very hard very hard to do. When I say Westerners, I really mean anybody raised in a Western fashion, which takes, which is extremely independent, and that's not always in a good way. So there's immediately, for many of us, sort of a, why do I believe it just because so-and-so said it? And India doesn't have that view. India has the view that the scriptures, the revealed scriptures, these are the non-dual scriptures, or revealed usually, actually, the revealed scriptures has to do with the nature of reality, the nature of the individual soul, the nature of the world, and things like that that do not change. You know, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about prehistoric times to ancient times to modern times. The nature of reality doesn't ever change. And the nature of the individual soul doesn't change. The nature of the world doesn't change. So these are givens. So the ones who speak with authority on these things have made these scriptures. Now, why is it that they speak with authority? It's because they have seen the nature of reality and become established in it. They know that the self and reality are one and the same, and that the self and nature are two different things. Now, of course, we're always talking about how there's only one reality, so nature comes out of that one reality. It's projected out of cosmic mind, etc. So what else is there? It's a misreading. Yes, but before we get there, we're having to make a distinction. So just imagine that you've, using the old analogy, the standard analogy of the rope and the snake, these seers have come across that so-called snake. They've seen the rope, and now they see that rope everywhere. That rope stands for the essence of reality. That is the fundamental foundation for everything that we see. It's, if we had the eyes to see, we would see it shining through everything. And so for them, the real, the existence itself is what's visible. It's more obvious than the unreal, and they just don't mistake it. Just like if we do come across that snake in the road and we look at it and we realize, oh, that's not moving at all, and I've stood here for a long time petrified, and I'm going to get a little closer, I'm going to grab a stick, I'm going to touch that snake, and I find out it's a rope, and now I cannot see the snake anymore. I only see the rope. Maybe I can make my mind see that snake again. But what I really see more clearly than anything else is that rope. And so that's like when Swami Vivekananda went to see Sri Ramakrishna for the first time. And he had been going to all these different pundits and teachers and priests and whatnot, and asking them all the same question. Sir, have you seen God? And until he reached Sri Ramakrishna, they all quoted scripture at him, but they weren't able to speak from their own direct experience. And Sri Ramakrishna said to him immediately, yes, I have seen God. I see him more clearly than I see you. And you can too. So this is, you know, a very recent example of somebody who the unreal, the non-eternal, was less obvious than the eternal, the real. So you see that we see that then therefore these realized beings, these world teachers, and the ancient scriptures that were written by these beings are accepted in India as true. And so back to where I started all of this with the poet sage of these 58 verses, when the teacher says such and such, when the scripture, the Upanishad says such and such, it is taken to be the truth. And so there's this immediate faith in it. And that's extremely powerful. When we have that kind of faith and surrender to truth and to the representatives of truth, we make very quick progress. Now, I can just hear some people going in their minds, yeah, well, there's been a lot of false prophets. There's been some really questionable teachers in our country and in other countries that have led people astray and whatnot. Well, in India, they have the 4 qualifications of the teacher, and people know this, right? Or the more mature ones do. And so they have that as the background. So, and in case anyone here doesn't know what those are, it's the 4 qualifications are knowing the essence of the scriptures and being able to transmit them, living a pure and simple life that's in accord, having no ulterior motive than that you get realized, that we get realized. That's their only purpose. Just like Sri Krishna said, there isn't anything here for me to gain, yet I am here doing this service, paraphrased. And then the last one is that they be a knower of Brahman, a knower of God. So, and that has different steps. And we've been through that earlier in these classes. So people know this. And so they have that discrimination. And undoubtedly, our sage had that discrimination when he came to his teacher. So why are we going to look at these 10 tenets, which are just wonderful? It's because now, going back to Vedanta, there's the practice of discrimination between the real and the unreal has 2 phases. The first part is called adhyaropa. And this adhyaropa means intuiting that there is a mistake going on. There's an error of understanding or perception. And when we first get the teaching of discriminating between the real and the unreal, we maybe have a hard time because it just means such a different thing in conventional English. But then somebody comes along, and for me, it was Lex Hickson. He came along and he said, you mean eternal and non-eternal? Oh, I can grok that. I understand that. So many of us get to this point where we're going to discriminate between what's eternal, the self, and what's non-eternal, the not self. And then there's a tendency early on in the practice, I can do that. And that gives me a little bit of relief, a little bit of sense of security. But I haven't yet renounced or rejected or stepped away from the unreal, the non-eternal, the not self. And, so I haven't made the next step. And that's actually step number 3 in the way I'm presenting this. That would be renunciation, right? Or detachment. But between adhyaropa and that is something called apavada. Apavada is using analysis and reasoning to get to the heart of the matter, to really see the difference between the real and the unreal, the eternal and the non-eternal. And when that is fully done, truly and fully done, the renunciation or the detachment is natural. So let's take it in another way. So these sages, and the word for these kinds of beings is apta, A-P, P like Paul, A-P-T-A, apta. And these beings are attained. They have realized Brahman. They have realized the self and Brahman as one. And now they always see it as it is. So imagine reaching this point of apavada where you no longer identify with the non-self. And when that happens, then you see it like it is. And that's what I forgot to start this whole little preamble with, is that we have a saying in SRV, which is, in order to tell it like it is, you have to see it like it is. This is actually something Babaji wrote to me maybe 2 decades ago. In order to tell it like it is, you have to see it like it is. And these aptas see it like it is. And so therefore they tell it like it is. And that's why this sage poet completely accepts what the teacher says. Says, I'm going to warn you about the 16 evolutes of Maya. And meanwhile, I've taught you about the 10 fundamental tenets of Samkhya. And obviously, when he learns these, he takes them as God's truth and moves forward with them. So it's a very powerful, powerful position. So when we perform this apavada, it's a logical discriminative analysis, and it needs to culminate in rejecting the mind's habit of taking the unreal for the real, the non-eternal for the eternal. And here we're talking about the self, really, right? If we take the body to be the self, then we're taking the unreal to be real. So the aptas, again, going back to them, they have completely performed this. And so they don't have to do it by intellectual reasoning anymore. They just see it like it is. So with that preamble, let's jump into the 10 fundamental tenets of Samkhya, because this is going to give us that process of reasoning through the lens of Samkhya. And before we get to the 10 tenets, just to keep you on the edge of your seats, let's take a look at what Samkhya's Purusha is, because this is all about Purusha and Prakriti. So Samkhya's Purusha is the reality underlying all phenomena. It is free of time, space, and causation. It is, and every time I see this word, I hear Swami Asheshananda saying it, Shuddha Buddha Mukta. He said that a lot, talking about the self. It is pure, it is conscious, it is free. And when we say conscious, capital C, just think of it as conscious awareness. We don't want to mix it up with thinking consciousness. It is, to make a correlation, it is the Atman of Vedanta, but multifarious. And multifarious here means that Samkhya accepts that there's many Purushas, many individual souls. And then this last point here is that Purusha represents souls in non-theistic Samkhya and souls and God in theistic Samkhya. So that's an orientation around Purusha. Now, Prakriti is the insentient material energy principle. And the key here is that it's insentient, and we're going to have a lot to say about that coming up. It is the origin of all phenomena. It is the cause in this system. It is inherently intangible. Think about when we talk about unmanifested Prakriti, where the gunas are in equilibrium. It's unmanifested, so it's not perceptible to the senses and only perceivable by the highly trained mind. So it's inherently intangible, but becomes tangible later via its evolutes. It is made of the three gunas in equilibrium. You know, when they're in equilibrium, there's no phenomena. And then it appears to be sentient due to attaching to Purusha and assuming its presence. And, you know, I just kind of want to jump to a statement that Lord Kapila himself makes, which is, like a magnet, Prakriti attaches itself to Purusha and receives its conscious rays. All right, now let's dive into the 10 tenets. So the first one is, and this is like, I mean, if any of us remember geometry, it almost sounds like a set of proofs. And I actually really like that. There exists a conscious, sentient self, and that C should and the S should probably be capitalized there. There exists a conscious, sentient self. And the thing to know about this is that Purusha is the only sentient thing, reality in the psychophysical unit, as well as the universe. So at the microcosm, at the macrocosm, and it's the only sentient reality. Second one is, there is an insentient, unmanifest cause, which is called Prakriti. Recently, I heard Babaji say something in similar, in kind of this context, that nature is not out to get us. It is simply evolving, manifesting according to the laws of causation and time and space. But it's doing it in the presence of Purusha, right? Like a magnet, Prakriti attaches itself to Purusha and receives its conscious rays. So there's nothing that can happen without a sentient principle, because an insentient cause has no power of its own. Now, this kind of a statement really dives very deeply, and it might kind of shake assumptions that we have had that we didn't even realize we were still hanging on to. Nothing happens without a sentient reality, because an insentient cause, i.e. Prakriti, has no power. Now, the next one, the third one, is that Purusha exists for no other entity. It is independent. It depends on nothing. It doesn't need Prakriti. It exists all on its own. Number 4 is that Prakriti, matter, exists to serve Purusha. So somewhere Swami Vivekananda is talking about the unchanging nature and unaffected nature of the soul of, he's probably saying Atman, but it's same as Purusha here, saying that the soul is reading the book of nature, turning page after page, drinking it in, and then closes the book, paraphrasing here, when it has had enough. But Purusha has not gone anywhere. Prakriti appears to have gone everywhere. But unless the soul opens that book, it's as if Prakriti is not happening. So again, without a sentient principle, there is no witness to the existence of Prakriti. It cannot witness itself. Therefore, it is always and ever serving Purusha, because that's all there is to serve. And that's, yeah, maybe I've said enough, but this is like a koan. It cannot witness itself. So therefore, it is always serving Purusha. So another one of Kapila's quotes is that the Mahat, that's the cosmic mind, is a vehicle for Purusha's consciousness and a medium between the soul and nature. A small portion of the Mahat becomes the individual buddhi or intellect of a human being. So one of the things that struck me as I read this, that, you know, there's a part of me that plays devil's advocate when looking at these kinds of teachings. And I wonder if this came up for anybody else, that if nature is there to serve Purusha, and our essence is that Purusha, our identity is that Purusha, then how is that different from saying that God gave man dominion over nature and then all the hellish things that have happened after that? I don't know if that came up for anybody, but that was one of the, I wonder if somebody will think about that, thoughts in my devil advocacy that came up. And this is nothing like that. This is nothing like having dominion over nature in the way that we have seen it historically and at present, because in India, the accent has always been on nonviolence, non-coveting, non-accumulation, non-greed, on sense control. Further, when we just go back and look at these 10 tenets of Samkhya, Purusha has no need of nature for its own existence. And Purusha is Shuddha, Buddha, Mukta. It's pure, conscious, and free. It's bliss itself. What can nature possibly give it other than limited existence, limited enjoyment, and suffering, which of course is limited too. Thank goodness we don't have an eternal hell in Indian philosophy. So the fact that Prakriti exists only to serve Purusha does not lead us down that road, because identifying ourselves as Purusha gives us back our true, eternal, indivisible existence, consciousness, and bliss, and freedom. All right, so the next one is Purusha is distinct from Prakriti and its evolutes. Okay, and its evolutes are not only, let me throw up another chart here. Its evolutes are not only, shucks, sorry about that. Not only the cosmic mind, the intellect, the ego, and then all the rest of this that give us the heavens, the mental realms, and the physical realms. It is also what beings do with these powers. These are all different kinds of powers. And so when we falsely begin to identify with ego and onwards, then we get the 16 evolutes, or the 9 limitations of yoga, or we get the 12 nidanas of Buddhism. We get all of these things that are a cause for suffering. So Purusha is distinct from all of that. And we should know that. If we know that it exists for no other entity, it's certainly not going to exist for the evolutes that come out of Prakriti. So this puts everything, you know, even so far, it's like we're righting the boat. Instead of getting water in our boat, we have bailed it. The more and more we take on these statements, we have bailed that boat, we have righted it, and there isn't going to be any more water in our boat, any more Prakriti and its evolutes in our boat, unless we want it there, right? So that's the next. Oh, the next one is Purusha is not an agent of action. It is free of agency. And this is a beautiful thing. So, like Sri Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, all action takes place in Prakriti. He says this in chapter 3, verses 27 and 28. And I'll just quote them, read them out here. The gunas of Prakriti perform all karma. With the understanding clouded by egoism, people think, I am the doer. But, O mighty armed, speaking to Arjuna, the one intuitive into the nature of guna and karma. Okay, gunas are the qualities. And the qualities all go into the makeup of these different evolutes. Those who are intuitive into the nature of guna and karma knows that the gunas as senses merely abide with the gunas as objects and does not become entangled. Isn't that a great word? Does not become entangled. So the one who is intuitive that the senses merely abide with the gunas as senses and the gunas as objects. And remember that Prakriti is made up of the three gunas, so they do not, the one who knows this does not become entangled in the functions of the gunas, which is tantamount to saying does not become entangled in Prakriti and engaging in false identification there. So then the next one, number 6, is the Purusha is, union of Prakriti, number 7, occurs. So there occurs union of Prakriti with Purusha. And so, as Babaji would say, there's an interrelation between spirit and matter. But if we are following the course, the logical course of these tenets, then our boat is already righted, and we're going to be associating. Purusha is going to associate with Prakriti and not think it is Prakriti, not think that it is nature. So there is no phenomena without a witness or intelligence to perceive it. And if the Purusha falsely identifies with it, and then karma rolls on inexorably. So we have to remember that this union is only an appearance and not take it to be real. And so like earlier today, I was doing a class and I used the example of, take a sock, right? We put our foot in the sock, but we then don't say that our foot is a sock any more than we should say that the ego is me. I am the ego, or I am the intellect, or I am the thoughts and emotions and passions, that I am a body, this body, okay? That's when karma rolls on inexorably. And there's a really, I've probably used this example a lot, but this pulls together several different threads that we've had so far. And it's from the Adhyatma Ramayana, where Shiva is teaching Parvati with a story about Sri Ram, Hanuman, and Sita. And Sri Ram turns to Sita after observing Hanuman and says, Hanuman is a candidate for the highest knowledge. Please explain to him the truth. And she turns to Hanuman and she says, know Rama to be the supreme Brahman, the existence, knowledge, bliss absolute. the one without a second. He is pure existence, devoid of all adjuncts, all limitations, whom the senses cannot perceive as their object, because why? He's the supreme seer. Okay, she's telling the real truth about Ram. She goes on, know Rama as pure bliss, as devoid of all impurity, as peace, as changeless substance, as free from the stain of ignorance. Know him as all-pervading spirit, as devoid of all disvalues, and as self-revealing consciousness. Purusha is that self-revealing consciousness. Ram is that self-revealing consciousness. And then she goes on, and this is the next two verses are the clincher. Know me to be the primeval Prakriti, the material and instrumental cause of the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe. In the mere presence of Rama, the supreme Brahman, I, his Prakriti, his power, create the universe unwearied. What I create in his mere presence, the ignorant superimpose on him. And then she launches into the whole story of Ram's life and how everyone thinks that that is happening to him, but he is merely the witness, just like Purusha exists for no other entity. Matter exists to serve Purusha. Purusha is distinct from Prakriti and its evolutes, and the Purusha is not an agent of action. Okay, so yeah, so that's a little bit out of the Itihasa. And actually, there's so much more. You know, there's a story I would like to tell. Years ago, we had he's passed away, but the astronomer, John Dobson, he came and he spoke before us, and he shared a story, and it had to do with this changeless, unmoving self, and the day he got the aha moment about how he was that. And so he was visiting the Griffith Observatory in Hollywood, and there they have something called a Foucault pendulum. And the pendulum is suspended in such a way that it is not affected by any vibrations in the building. And so the only thing that affects it is the motion of the earth. And in this way, it detects the motion of the earth. So this is, I'd have to read the whole thing that I wrote. And I don't know if this is of interest to everybody, but maybe we'll get into that after class. Anybody who wants to hear about it, it's really a cool story. So the next one is separation of spirit from matter occurs. Separation of Prakriti from Purusha occurs. And so when we're through reading that book of nature, then we step away. And one way or another, whether we've gotten exhausted with karma, with pallid imitation of everyone else, and we've had this yearning from freedom, at some point, we're going to want to step away from Prakriti, from matter. And then number 9, which Vedanta has a hard time with, is that it says there are many conscious Purushas. And we can just say that it certainly appears this way, right? There are many embodied beings. And Samkhya, as it was set up, is set up to inculcate discrimination in the embodied beings between the Purusha and nature. So we don't have to get into that little argument that goes on between Vedanta and Samkhya. Samkhya provided the scaffolding and the house, basically. It just left off the roof, as Swamiji put it. The last one is after self-realization, the body may continue to exist via the momentum of its own laws. And this is rather like, the beginning of the case for the state of Jivan Mukti, Jivan Mukta. Right. So Jivan Mukti is that living liberated state where the body continues because you could say there's still prarabdha karma. There's still some karma going on, but the soul is already free. So we're now 15 minutes away from the end of class. And what I wanted to do next is start to go through the evolutes of Maya, but do it in a way that has participation. And we can take up some more of this in a couple of weeks. But take a look at this chart. I've got the 10 tenets right here. And then here's the first 8 evolutes. And these first 8 evolutes are almost enough in themselves. But when we get to evolutes 9 to 16, 9 to 16, it's almost like these first 8 on steroids. And actually, it's what we are seeing all the time. Like we're seeing people with argumentative intellect, and we're seeing people with fault finding, with a habit and a practice of fault finding. We see people, and maybe ourselves too sometimes, having attachment to lower knowledge. We see mistaking the world for the only reality going on. We see mistaking the unreal for the real. We see mistaking the self as an agent. These are all further evolutes of these first 8, you could say, and they're all, based in forgetfulness of one's true nature. So let me just read down these, and then what I'd like to do is open up the floor and invite you all to choose one and say which of the 10 tenets of Samkhya, or which several of them, you would apply in the process of reasoning to counteract it, to do your apavada with, okay? So let me just read down this because we might have people who are just on the phone. The first of the evolutes is mudavasta, forgetfulness of one's true nature. The next one is mamakara, the sense of I, me, and mine. The third one is dehadhyasa, body attachment. The fourth is paradhyasa, mistaking the body for the self. The next is vishaya shakti, sense attachment. And I see Vishaya Shakti and Bahir Mukha Vritti as being quite related, from this attachment to the senses that the mind gets into. We then develop more of an outward going mind, because if we're attached to the senses, we're then going outward to the objects, right? So then we develop this constantly outward going mind, constantly seeking gratification. The next one that's listed is the Ashanatrayam, the triple desire, or often called the triple bondage of the desire for spouse, wealth, and progeny. And then Shatavadana is scattered awareness, or thinking and doing 100 things at once, multitasking. So, all right, I'm going to be quiet here and hope that somebody or several of you will jump in and say which of these tenets you would apply to which of these. Okay, I'll do one. So, mudavasta, forgetfulness of one's true nature. So we want to affirm our identity as Purusha. So number one, there exists a conscious, sentient self, the Purusha. And how do I know this? Because the seers have told me so. And all of us, I'm sure, are starting to intuit this as a fact, or have had some direct experience already. Okay, so the first remedy is to meditate, contemplate, recite that there exists a conscious, sentient self, the Purusha, and to engage in a powerful spiritual practice along with that. So meditating on it. Did somebody want to raise their hand and join in? You don't have to raise your hand, just unmute yourself and talk.
Namaste, Annapurna. Namaste, everyone. I guess I'd say for body attachment, you could apply maybe the same one. There exists a conscious sentient self, the Purusha, and also number two to interplay with it, the insentient, unmanifested cause property. But then I guess I'd like to kind of throw in a question here.
Mm-hmm.
I can string into that with number 9. There are many conscious Purushas, and you kind of already touched on this. And can those many conscious Purushas then be resolved into one Atman, would you say? In terms of, I guess we're crossing over, Sankhya and Vedanta here in terms maybe and whatnot, but
Yes, we are. And, I think for us in SRV, that's quite okay, because we're constantly fusing, merging, making use of Samkhya, Vedanta, and yoga all the time. But, it's useful at times to know, what the different systems are saying, or as they've come down to us. But yeah, Babaji and I went back and forth on that. If the Mahat is the vehicle for the consciousness of Purusha, and the medium between the soul and nature, then it really does sound like there's a padam, a Purusha, and these individuals letting go of nature would dissolve into it. Doesn't that sound logical? And that's like what we say in Vedanta. So I'm not saying that that's exactly what Kapila was saying, but I just find it hard not to escape that. So
yeah. And can I share something too from the end of the yoga, the How to Know God, the last one, and it relates to what you were saying earlier too. And I want to read the commentary also, but it says, since the gunas no longer have any purpose to serve for the Atman, they resolve themselves into Prakriti. This is liberation. The Atman shines forth in its own pristine nature as pure consciousness. And then the commentary says, we shall let Swami Vivekananda have the last word. Nature, or Prakriti's task is done. This unselfish task, which our sweet nurse nature has imposed upon herself, she gently took the self-forgetting soul by the hand, as it were, and showed him all the experiences in the universe, all manifestations, bringing him higher and higher through various bodies, till his lost glory came back and he remembered his own nature. Then the kind mother went back the same way she came for others who have also lost their way in the trackless desert of life. And thus she is working, without beginning and without end. And thus, through pleasure and pain, through good and evil, the infinite river of souls is flowing into the ocean of perfection, of self-realization. So I just wanted to share.
yeah, that's beautiful. And it's kind of a fusion of Tantra, yoga, and Vedanta there. Yeah, because in Samkhya, they say that Prakriti is insentient, but in yoga, we have that Chitti Shakti, right? Dynamic power. And we have the Shakti or Maya, or maybe we should talk about Tantra here. We have the Mahashakti or the Mahamaya. And these, Mother is sentient, obviously, but she's the dynamic, sentient power of Brahman. So it's really hard to not pull these together. And SRV is under Babaji is certainly, all about synthesis and making connections. So thank you. Thank you, Chaitanya. Who's next? I saw Sprishanti raised her hand.
Yeah, namaste. I'll give one a go. Looking at body attachment, and I'm thinking another one that could apply besides 1 and 2 could be 4, that matter, because the body is matter, exists to serve Purusha. I don't know if you want me to expound on that. I don't really have more to say. I'm thinking about the other ones as well.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes
moving
to
on to
just
the
choose
next.
one.
Yeah. I could try one more. Mistaking the body for the self. Let me look and see what we have on the 10 tenets of Sankhya for mistaking the body for the self. The Purusha, I was gonna say the Purusha is not an agent of action. Could apply to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're mistaking the body for the self, be mistaking your actions happen in your body for the non-self or for Prakriti.
Number 4 might fit for that too, then, yeah?
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Very good. Very good. And so if you take these kinds of thoughts, this kind of contemplation into your formal sitting practice, then see where the mind goes with this. I mean, where your intelligence leads you through this kind of focused analysis. And if anyone wants a copy of this, I'll send it to them if that would be helpful. There's actually a whole lot more we could say about each of these 16 evolutes, and we'll go into it more in the next one. But we can keep on. We still have 5 minutes here. Anybody else want to jump in?
Namaste.
Namaste, Nivedita.
Thank you for the talk. It's so good, and the charts, and thanks for Babaji's charts too. I would extend to the previous share and say that Mamakara, the sense of I, me, mine, could all, for me, where I'm at now, probably not when I was younger, but for matter exists to serve Purusha. So for me, I, me, mine becomes it's a sense of something. And so it doesn't matter whether I separate out. The highest order is to serve Purusha. So that's how I could get myself out of I, me, mine, by remembering that no matter what I think I am, then I, as an extension, am here to exist to serve Purusha.
Right, but when you say that, then are you assuming the position of Prakriti?
No, but that world, as opposed to a higher world, like it just makes me feel remind myself that those pieces aren't really real, right? Like, so if Prakriti isn't is something manifest, but Purusha is the higher order, if you will. I don't know if you could say higher or lower, but it seems
It's
like
the absolute. It's the absolute order. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, to get me out of I, me, mine, that would be like the ladder toward, like using Prakriti to get toward Purusha, right?
With the foreknowledge that you are Purusha And so you're climbing out of Prakriti with that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, good. All right. We've still got a couple of minutes. Who's next?
I can do a quickie. The mistaking the body for the self, parasparadhyasa, and I think the tenet that would be the cure for that is Purusha is just separation of Prakriti from Purusha occurs. So I think it's a really important step when you can stop identifying with the body as the self or even the mind as the self, and make that distinction that there's an unchanging witness, and that has nothing to do with the body, and that the body actually isn't real. It just keeps on transforming. But the once you can make that distinction between Prakriti and Purusha, or Shiva and Shakti, you can get rid of a false identification, and really start to identify with that unchangeable foundation. So one is not fooled by the body as the self.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So I would like to recommend that we all memorize at least 1 through 8. Can we do that? Memorize them in order. And then when you sit for meditation, you don't have to worry about having a piece of paper in front of you or anything. When you commit them to memory, it goes in deeper into the mind. And yeah, and then use it to apply to all of these different evolutes. And we'll go into the evolutes a little bit more in detail. But really the main thing that we want to focus on is solutions. And so these 10 tenets of Samkhya. The next time we meet for this class, oh, I'm sorry, let's take a look at number 11. I hope to get into number 12, because that's where we're going to show Babaji's 16 evolutes of Maya chart. Because here he says, thereafter, the 11 main characteristics of Maya were rendered clear to my intelligence. And it seems that between the 10 tenets and understanding these 16 evolutes, then the 11 main characteristics of Maya are more at a level of principle, and that will be very helpful. And his comeback, which I don't know how fast we'll be able to get to these, is the 20 truths of truth, to recite that. So this is going to be a very powerful and interesting verse as well. But we want to know more about the 16 evolutes, and that will help us as well to understand the main characteristics when they get presented. So thank you all. I know we went over, and I appreciate your patience. Let me close. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrichor ma amritam gamaya abira bira maedi rudrayate dakshinam mukam tenamam pahinicham. Om shanti shanti shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth, from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real. Reach us through, and from the illusion of death to eternal existence. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all living beings. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. So I do have announcements. Let me stop the share and pause.